We want to now update you on that parliamentary hearing that took place today in our nation's capital. It looked into whether there was political interference in the 2020 Nova Scotia mass murder investigation. Earlier this afternoon, RCMP Chief Superintendent Darren Campbell testified that RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki was under pressure to make information about the gunman's weapons public, but he felt that information should not be released. Here is some of that testimony.
On several occasions during that call, the Commissioner stated that she felt disrespected, that she was sad and disappointed with the fact that I had not released the information about the firearms used, and that she had been advised that I would release that information. The Commissioner also said that she had promised the Minister and the Prime Minister's office that information about the firearms would be included in the press briefing. As detailed in my notes, I attempted to explain to the Commissioner that I could not and would not release that information at that time, as a premature release could have a negative impact on the investigation. It was at that time the Commissioner told my colleagues and I that we didn't understand, that this was tied to pending legislation that would make officers and the public safer. I left that meeting feeling deflated and, to borrow the Commissioner's words, sad and disappointed. My position was firm that I would continue to protect the integrity of the investigation by not releasing any information that could have a negative impact on ongoing investigative efforts. We owed this to the victim families, the survivors, to the public, and to those tasked with completing an impartial, competent, and professional investigation.
The CBC's Peter Cowan has been covering this hearing for us all day, and he's in Ottawa with more on what we heard from Campbell and how it differs from what the Commissioner said in her testimony.
She testified last month, and there are some similarities in what they both testified. It seems to be clear that, yes, she did want this information to be released, and she was disappointed when they didn't release it at a key news conference that happened towards the end of April in 2020. Now, where we're seeing some differences of opinion here is around why was there pressure to release that information. As you heard there from Campbell, he felt that there was political pressure. And you remember that this was just before the Liberals were rolling out new legislation to ban assault-style weapons. And so he felt that that was the reason why she wanted this information released, in order to strengthen the case for that legislation. But we heard from Lucki in her testimony that that's not the case, that she really only wanted it out there because she had told the minister's office that this information was going to be released. Here's what she told the committee last month.
I did not interfere in the investigation around this tragedy, nor did I experience political interference. Specifically, I was not directed to publicly release information about weapons used by the perpetrator to help advance pending gun control legislation.
So that's certainly not the way Darren Campbell interpreted that meeting. He took detailed notes throughout that meeting, notes that he referred to in his testimony. And today he basically stood by everything he had in those notes. He said, look, this is the way I remember it. And it is worth pointing out here that he was backed up today by Leah Scanlon, who is a civilian communications person who was also in that meeting. She was testifying today as well, and she said she agrees with everything that Campbell said about how that meeting went.
So then, Peter, what does the committee do with all this information now?
Yeah, so there's certainly a difference of opinion on this. The Conservatives wanted to call more witnesses, including some of the staffers within the minister's office, as they felt that they need to try and get to the bottom of this. Exactly, was there political pressure or not? And the Conservatives certainly believed that there was pressure, and the question then is, okay, so what do you do about fixing this? And one of the things that came up today was, do we need better legislation in order to protect the independence of the RCMP? And Leah Scanlon said today that, yes, she does believe that there needs to be some sort of strengthening in order to make sure a similar situation doesn't happen again.
I think it's important that it be examined, and we should... There needs to be a level of independence so that from the selection process all the way through that there's not, there's a very different, a mandate letter and keeping our partners informed or providing information to the Minister of Public Safety or the Minister's office, that's very different than interfering, influencing, or exerting pressure. So I think that words need to be carefully examined, and if it's vague, we should be more specific. So that we're never in this situation again.
So the situation for the committee now is to try and reconcile these very different perspectives all on that one meeting to try and figure out, was there actually pressure? And then if so, what do they do about that? We heard the Conservatives have said options on the table, perhaps calling for the resignation of Bill Blair, who was the Minister of Public Safety. He insists that he did not have any influence, did not direct the RCMP. They've also said on the table might be calling for the resignation of Brenda Lucki, believing that her conduct was inappropriate into trying to put pressure. So that's what the Conservatives are thinking, but of course there's the NDP and the Liberals as well. So the committee is going to have some interesting discussions coming up as they try and figure this out into next month.
That's the CBC's Peter Cowan. Thank you.